Hey guys, welcome to the Mind's Eye Status podcast. Today we have the honor of having a guest, Sarah Boutros, who helps people discover their self-worth, especially in the context of relationships. We're going to be having a deep conversation with my lovely wife, Elvira, here about relationships, confidence, and masculine, feminine dynamics. So make sure you stick around. Well, thank you so much for being here, Sarah. Nice to meet you again.
Yeah.
And sitting here with my lovely wife, Elvira, I thought it'd be fun for the three of us to have a conversation. Do you do much podcasts?
This is the first time that I'm guesting on somebody's podcast this
No
year.
way.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, so it's not very frequent that I'm being invited, so it's awesome to be here.
Yeah, good to have you. It's an honor in that case. That's really cool. All right, well, why don't you introduce yourself for the listeners who don't know who you are?
Yeah. So my name is Sarah Boutros. I'm a relationship coach, and I help men and women who struggle with insecure attachment styles build healthier relationships.
Men and women?
Men and women.
Amazing. Okay, how long have you been doing that for?
It's been 2 years. I've gone full-time into it this year specifically. So this is the full focus of what I'm doing right now.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
That's a huge step. What made you finally take that leap and go full-time?
I just saw that there was a lot of traction that was happening within the business, and there was a demand for what I was offering. My clients were getting amazing results, so I just thought, fuck it, why not? Yeah, just go all in, because I loved it. I had another job alongside it, but that was more of a money-making thing, and this was more of a passion thing.
Got it.
Yeah.
Okay, because relationships are probably one of my favorite subjects to talk about, to be honest, because it goes so deep, doesn't it?
Yeah.
If you want to have a secure relationship, if you want to attract the right partner, for example, that requires you to have so many elements of your psyche and your emotional state, not in control, but at a healthy capacity. So it goes very deep. And in fact, even with Elvira, we talk about our relationship frequently, probably weekly. We talk about
every day.
sometimes daily.
Yeah.
We talk about our needs, for example, and our challenges as well. And I would say that's why I brought her on as well, partly why, because maybe we can share some things with you. When you go deep, it is, I believe, one of the greatest avenues to personal development.
Yeah.
So what have you personally discovered about yourself as you've learnt about how to learnt about self-worth in relationships?
Yeah. The biggest thing that I've learned is that the relationship that you have with yourself sets the stage for all of the other relationships that you have in your life. Because if you don't believe that you deserve love, then you will settle for people who treat you like you don't. Yeah. Building your self-worth means that you get to a point when your relationship with yourself where you're not afraid to have standards, set boundaries, express your needs. And these are all things that are essential for building a healthy relationship with someone else.
Okay.
Because if you're constantly suppressing yourself out of fear of being too much or not enough, even if you have a healthy person in front of you, they have no roadmap on how to show up for you.
Yeah. Quick one on that.
Yeah.
What does low self-worth look like in a relationship and even in dating?
It manifests in so many different ways for people. On the one end of the spectrum, you have people that are overly anxious. So they have a deep fear of being abandoned. So
That
they
was
will
me.
So they will cling onto their partners for dear life, as if they're a life raft. Because without their partner, they feel like they have no value and no self-worth. So they're constantly asking their partner for reassurance, constantly clinging onto the relationship, waiting for the shoe to drop as well. Because of the fear of abandonment that they have, they don't trust that the love that somebody gives them is going to stay. So they're constantly hypervigilant, looking for signs that he's going to leave me, he's going to cheat on me, he's going to lie to me. And it just creates a lot of instability for both people Because on the one hand, the anxious person is constantly begging for reassurance, and the other person feels like they're under a microscope.
And there's that pressure on them.
Yeah,
as
it's the
well.
pressure, but it's also hard for the anxious person then to open themselves up to the love that the other person is trying to give them. So they both feel disconnected from each other.
Got it.
Yeah. And then on the other end of the spectrum, you have people that are so insecure and they're so afraid of being hurt that their walls are just up to here. You cannot get through to them. They learned somewhere along the way that they cannot rely on other people for love and support and connection. So they've learned to be hyper independent and to look after themselves. The problem with that is that healthy relationships are built on interdependence. And
What's the difference between
yeah,
those two, between interdependence
Yeah.
and codependence?
independence is I don't need anyone else. I've got myself. Interdependence is I can take care of myself and I can also trust you to take care of me. Codependency, which is something that you touched on just now, is I need you to save me. I need you to be the one to take care of me. Yeah. So the healthy relationships is the balance in the middle, and then the insecure manifestations go on one of those ends of the spectrum.
And how can, for example, partners grow this middle, how you say,
Interdependence.
Interdependence.
Interdependence, yes. How can we maintain it?
Yeah. It depends on which end of the spectrum that you're at. Because on one end, you fear closeness. So your job is to start becoming more comfortable with leaning in for support in other people, leaning into being more vulnerable. A lot of the work starts with yourself as well. You have to get comfortable with your own vulnerability. You have to be honest about your own emotions. And then that translates into your relationship. On the opposite end of the spectrum, you have to get more comfortable with being independent. And you have to learn how to regulate yourself and meet your own needs so that you're not fully relying on somebody else to do that for you. Yeah, so it's very different depending on where you are.
It can be hard for people to hear that they are the one fully responsible for what's happening in their relationships, because as a communication coach, I know for a fact if somebody tells me, Sharko, it's hard to meet people. It's hard to meet people. And I say, okay, so you believe it's hard to meet people? They say, yeah. And I say, I believe you. It is hard to meet people for you because that's your belief. If somebody says it's easy to meet people, in fact, it's too easy to meet people, that's going to be their experience now.
Yeah.
So if somebody is overly anxious to the point where they are constantly waiting for that shoe to drop, as you put it, they're on the lookout, they're constantly on the back foot. Their subconscious mind is going to start giving them exactly what they're expecting. It's a subconscious assumption that they have. And our outer reality, including people, have no choice but to validate that assumption that we have, which is either positive or negative, depending on whatever outlook that we have. What do you think men misunderstand the most about women?
Ooh.
You can answer this as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think in the context of relationships, the biggest thing that I've seen is that men tend to have a little bit of aversion towards communication about emotions. Because when a woman is coming to them with emotions, it's not usually a language that they are practiced at speaking for themselves. Not generalizing all men, but the way that most men have been brought up to think is emotions are weak. They're not useful. Think with your logic, etc., etc. So they don't know how to navigate that. When a woman comes to them with her feelings, they see it as a problem to solve. And that can often leave a woman feeling so alone in what she's bringing to the table. Because when she's expressing herself or something that's upset her, she's not trying to say, you're a bad person or our relationship is broken. She's trying to say, I want you to see me. I want you to be present with me, and I want you to try and understand my internal world. When the men go into problem-solving mode, they're not focusing on her internal experience. And that's where the disconnect starts to happen.
Wow.
Yeah. Is that
Beautiful.
something that you guys have experienced?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
As a man, I can fall into that habit sometimes
Mm.
of trying to fix the problem
Yeah.
and fit the jigsaw puzzles together. What do you think?
About what men usually don't understand, or about
Yeah,
this?
what do they misunderstand?
I think that men, they more they have very stable moods. They have a strategy, logic too. But women's moods, for example, they can change very fast and not very logically. And women more vulnerable for because of world. And for example, she can feel upset 5 minutes after you made her very happy, but it wouldn't be actually because of you. Yeah, it will be like because of something in outer world made her like insecure or anxious or just yes. And plus men, I heard that men's, for example, hormones and cycles, they renewing every day. Yeah, but women, they just naturally, women's body works different, and it's very important to know each other how both bodies are working.
Yeah, that's so true. Because with women, they experience emotions so spontaneously and they can change so rapidly as well. And that's something that once I learned that from, David Data,
I've never heard of him.
I think you would really enjoy his work. He wrote a book called The Way of the Superior Man.
Oh, I've heard of it. Yeah.
Yeah, you've heard of that book?
I've heard of the book, yeah.
Yeah, it's one of the OGs, one of the godfathers of masculinity, femininity teachings. He teaches more masculinity, but he explains how to deal. He has a whole chapter called Dealing with Women.
I love that.
And
So forward.
yeah, it's a very direct book. And he explains that. He explains that women's emotions are similar to that of the weather, which is, it can be spontaneous, it can be warm, it can be rainy, it can be sunny, it can be cold, it can be violent, it can be dangerous, and it can be comforting as well. Your job is not to question why the weather is expressing itself the way that it's expressing itself. You're not going to wake up one day and say, why is it sunny? Or why is it raining? Because that's a very philosophical
Yeah.
question.
How can I change it?
Yeah, how can I change the weather right now? Exactly. What he says is you need to embrace it with total presence. And that's what I've found to work best, even when Elvira's upset about something, for example. I'll give you an example, actually. The hairbrush.
Yeah.
She forgot it. So on our way here, she forgot her hairbrush at home, and she had a mini panic attack. Not an actual panic attack, like just a mini reaction. And I can react to it in a few ways. Either I can just ignore her, which will make her feel dismissed, or I can use humor, which I did, or I can reassure her very lovingly. I opted for the second one because I was building up my energy for the podcast, so I started panicking very dramatically. I was like, "What? You forgot your hairbrush at home? No! What are we gonna do?" And then she started laughing, of course, and that shows that I'm still present with her. I'm hearing her, but I'm not gonna match her energy. I'm gonna exaggerate it. But another day, I might say, "It's fine, maybe. Maybe we can ask one of the girls if they have a hairbrush you can borrow, and I'll be there, and it'll be fine." In the past, I might have just immediately said, "Where'd you leave it?" Or, "Oh, you shouldn't have done that," or whatever. Would have.
I told you.
Yeah, I told you. You always forget things, this and that.
That never leads to good outcomes.
No,
Yes.
no. Okay. What about on the flip side? What do you think women misunderstand the most about men?
That's a good question. On the flip side, I think of different side of the same coin that I was talking about earlier. Women tend to think that men are not emotional. But men have a lot of deep emotion. They just don't have the language or the skill to really articulate it in a way that they can both understand each other for the most part, unless you've done like extensive amount of self-work and you've spent a lot of time getting to know yourself. And this kind of misunderstanding towards each other means that a lot of people struggle to know how to communicate with each other, because the man's in his logic and the woman's in her emotions, and she thinks that because he's being logical about it, he's not feeling anything. And he thinks because she's being emotional about it, she's not thinking logically. But both people have both skills, and I think that's the biggest misunderstanding. It's just that both people need to learn how to lean into the opposite.
And not just assume that men,
Yeah.
because they're not expressing, they don't
Yeah.
have the emotional capacity.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think for me, life-changing was when I just accepted the fact that it's actually a beauty in the difference between woman and man. And when I didn't try to change myself a lot or change my partner, when I just accepted the way it is, and not, I think you say, don't be too serious with yourself. You know, to see it more from a playful side, more from a, you know, what will be next out of curiosity, seeing relationships. I think it's really helped me to deal with some like panic emotions.
Not taking it so seriously.
Yeah.
Is there something specific that you are referring to when you say that?
Let me think. Yes, for example, when I had some habits in the future, in the past, and of course they will change when I started to live with a man, okay? And I could see it from the version of my past. And then I was thinking for myself, okay, if I want to live as the same as it was before, I can just don't be in relationships, but it's not what I want. And if I want to do something different, I need to sacrifice something. Yes, and that in that situation, I saw it not that dramatic as it was before. It helped me.
Okay. Yeah.
Relationships. So most of my clients are executives, CEOs, high-level entrepreneurs, and I've noticed a direct correlation between their communication ability, their confidence, and their relationship with their wives or girlfriends, usually wives. What are your thoughts? A bit of a general question, but I just want your thoughts because I don't know exactly where you stand on this. But what are your thoughts on leadership in a relationship?
Do you mean in terms of
The role
like
of leadership.
the masculine, feminine dynamics?
Yeah.
There's interesting research on this in one of the courses that I did by the Gottman Institute. And I think in this day and age, people are more leaning towards like, 50-50, nobody should be leading. We should just be equal in a relationship. But when the roles are more defined, there's less arguments and less conflict because there's clarity. When it's like 50-50 and is the woman leading as much as the man is leading, and where are you splitting the roles and responsibilities in the relationship, it starts to get blurry. And there starts to become more tension because you're trying to decide who's doing what.
There's more room for confusion.
Yeah, there's more room for confusion. That's exactly the way it's put. I believe that the leadership in relationships is important. But I feel like both people do have to have the capacity to lead themselves as well. A lot of things I see, especially around the masculine, feminine dynamics, is that people think that the guy has to be hyper masculine and the woman has to be hyper feminine. But then what you get is a woman who is really passive and a man who is almost controlling. The man also has to be able to soften in his leadership. He also has to lean into being able to nurture his woman. And the woman also has to be able to step into leadership and support her man and have boundaries and communicate her needs. So those are my kind of thoughts on it. Yeah, it's like a yin and yang of both. But obviously, on the flip side of that, if you find a hyper-masculine woman, you'll never see her with a masculine man. There always has to be some sort of polarity where one person is leaning into more than the other.
Yeah.
A hyper-masculine woman leading in a relationship and a hyper-masculine man trying to lead in a relationship is just not going to work.
No, it won't.
Yeah.
It simply won't.
Yeah.
That's true. Something interesting about the yin yang. If you look at a photo of the yin yang, it kind of looks like two fish, right? But the two symbols, if you look closely, they're actually swirling. So they are moving. It's meant to be a moving motion. So they're swimming, constantly following. And that symbolizes flexibility because it's like water. Water is fluid, water is flexible. And the yin and yang, yes, they have their roles, but each has that capacity, that little dot of black or white within them as well. So that allows them to be more spontaneous. For example, for the man, he can tap into that nurturing side if he needs to, that spontaneous side, even the flexible side. Sometimes I can be a perfectionist and I can be stubborn as well. And I think that helps me in business. It helps me with my work, definitely. And sometimes it comes up in our relationship. So something that I've learned where I need to be flexible. I'm so glad you brought this up because I haven't articulated this. I don't think I have. Is sometimes in the relationship, Elvira would say something and my initial reaction is to say, no, we're doing it this way. And usually that's actually fine. She's happy for me to take the lead. But sometimes I catch myself saying, right, for example, if it's something that's important to her, like how to set the dinner table or what to have for dinner or something like that, I know that's very important for her. And me, I'm so used to saying to my team, for example, we're doing this way. Sometimes it's fine, but sometimes I also need to be flexible with her. So do you feel that?
Because you are working in just in a sphere with emotional intelligence, coaching, you're communicating with people, I think you're very aware of yourself. And I think when we become in deeper relationship in marriage, you're really changing this habit. So I really feel it. But I wanted to ask you a question because I really like the idea of what you said about like clarity in the leadership roles or like that. What would you say people need to talk about before committing yourself in a like long-term relationships?
Good question.
Yeah. Love that. One of the most important things that you can understand is somebody's childhood, first of all, because those are the primary years that have shaped your worldview on what you believe love is. Those are the primary years that have shaped your view of yourself. And this is where you'll really get to understand what somebody's attachment style might be based on their previous experiences. The second thing is, what have they learned from their previous relationships? Ultimately, you can find out what happened in their last relationships as well, but I'm a firm believer that no one's perfect, and we probably all have a history of some questionable things that have happened in our relationships. What's more important is, what did you take away from that, and how did you work on yourself to grow from it? If somebody isn't willing to share that with you, you already know this person is not self-aware, not willing to reflect, and probably emotionally unavailable on some level. Yeah.
Well said.
So cancel that out. But what's also really important is to understand what each other's values and life vision is. Because a lot of the times I see people getting into relationships and they think that they have similar values because they've had a conversation about values, but they haven't gone deep enough to understand what each of those values mean to each other. I'll give you an example of this. I had a client who got into a relationship with a girl who said, I value family. And he's like, wow, great, me too. So if we end up seeing this for the long haul, somewhere along the way, we'll have a family together. Cool. As the time went on, what he started to realize is that her perception of family is so different to his. She wants to be more like of an independent mother and the man be a provider, which is kind of what some people have grown up to feel traditionally. But he didn't want that. He wanted to be way more involved in his kid's life. He wanted to take paternity leave. He wanted to spend time raising his son or daughter.
Totally different lifestyle.
Totally different. But they both value family.
Yeah.
That's
So,
interesting.
Yeah. So you need to not only figure out what the vision for the future and the values are, but also understand what do each of those things mean to both of you. Because people's psychology
Clearly.
and their experiences of life so different.
So true.
Yeah. And these end up becoming relationship killers down the line. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely, because it's a big thing. Like religion is another thing. If you're not clear
Yeah.
on each other's spiritual beliefs, that can definitely cause a problem.
Yeah.
Yeah, I haven't, I'll admit, I've never thought about the childhood thing. I always, well, I did ask Elvira about her childhood when we met, but it was more out of curiosity, not for the relationship, because I believe that people can and do change despite their childhood.
Yeah.
I would say that definitely about Elvira and myself. I don't know anything about your childhood, but for me, if you looked at my childhood, for example, you would say he's going to grow up extremely anxiously attached, probably insecure, and maybe with fear of not being good enough.
Yeah.
And here's the thing, you'd be right. Until maybe 3 years ago.
Yeah.
Until 3 years ago where I started doing the inner work to change it. So unless you're dating a self-development junkie like myself,
Yeah.
usually I think that makes a lot of sense to look at their childhood.
But it's sorry to interrupt.
go on.
It's not just about like determining where they are right now, and of course people are capable of change and they're capable of healing, but you don't erase childhood. It's a part of your subconscious mind for the rest of your life, and you can build neural pathways and you can grow. But the reality is, which I don't think enough people talk about, is that people default into old patterns. Even if it's not like the whole relationship is that you're an anxious person who's clinging on to dear hope, but people do default to their old patterns, especially depending on, you know, what comes up for them within the relationship. So just having that understanding is important. And it's not to say like, okay, if you had a bad childhood, it means that you're anxious and I shouldn't date you. People with anxious and avoidant attachment styles still deserve love, and they're still very capable of moving into earned secure attachment. But when you understand the context of their patterns, it allows you to have more empathy and compassion for where they are and
Very
when
true.
it comes up. Yeah, so I still think, despite the fact that there's capacity for change, it's still one of the most important things that you can talk about with someone.
Yeah. You're also talking about the parents and the relationship with the parents
Yeah.
as well. When we literally on our very, very first date, because I'm the kind of guy that was only dating to marry. I didn't want to date casually.
Yeah.
I just didn't want to. It didn't feel right for me. So on our very first date, I asked her, I said, what do you look for in a relationship? Are you just looking for a casual date? If so, it's fine, not for me. What are you looking for? She said a relationship. I said, okay, well, what in a relationship? And she asked me the exact same question. She just threw it back at me, Uno reverse card.
Yeah, I was asking more about your vision in the future, like what's your main goal, what's your mission, how you see yourself. But you were asking more about relationships, yes.
Yeah. Because it's important to get
Yeah.
clarity.
Yeah.
And that way you know. What's... No, you go on.
So you said about the big things they need to match, and you talk about them before. And I've heard that some people, they go through different like age periods in life, like 35 or 45. And then when, I think it's like age breaks or something, like age... I don't remember what's the name, but when people start to ask yourself many questions, am I going to the right side or what I actually want? And what to do if, for example, we talk about one thing when we were 20, for example, and then when we become 30, our visions are changed.
Yeah.
How to fix this, how to find a field for both of us if we grow, we change in different ways.
Yeah.
That's a good question.
Yeah, it's a really good question. And the way that you navigate that is literally through having open and honest communication and understanding, like, where does that impact the relationship? Because some people grow together. Even if they're growing in different directions, they're growing together. So those sort of changes don't usually make a difference to those kind of relationships. But if one person is growing in that direction and the other person is like maybe here and it's impacting the relationship, the idea is just to talk about what's the impact. Is there a way that we can navigate it? What does that look like? And that's where the work really begins on that front. But I've seen it often where a lot of people, for example, will start their personal development journey within a relationship, just as an example. And the other person does not want to work on themselves or change. It starts to create an imbalance. And not one person starts to want more depth. The other person is not interested in entertaining it. You kind of have two options in those kind of scenarios. You either find ways to meet that need outside of the relationship, and definitely not meaning like cheating and finding another person to share depth with, but
problem solved.
Like, yeah. More in the sense of like, can you find communities where you can tap into that depth and explore that for yourself and have that cup filled outside of your partnership?
It's interesting.
Yeah, because there's something that Esther Perel has said once, and I say this in almost all of the podcasts because it's so true and it's so important. These days we rely on one person to provide for us what we used to have provided by an entire village. We want our partner to be our best friend, our confidant, our lover. We want him to be adventurous but safe, and it's a lot to put on one person, and relationships crumble under that kind of pressure. So one of the ways that you can get those needs met is by exploring it externally for yourself, finding the hobbies, finding things that make you feel more alive.
Yeah.
But at some point you might say, but it's important for me to have these specific things in my relationship and not externally. Then it's up to you to weigh out, is it worth it? If this person is not willing to change and you've changed, is it going to work? So, yeah, those are kind of the two avenues that you would go down.
Yeah, I don't want to sound pessimistic, but I've noticed so many friends, acquaintances, and even clients where the man, or sometimes the woman as well, of course, would be into personal development, let's say, and maybe they'd be entrepreneurial, but they would definitely be reading these books, going to these seminars, working on themselves, meditating, blah, blah, blah. And the other person wasn't. They just had no interest in personal development. All they did was go to work, watch The Office, maybe go to the gym, go out for drinks on the weekend with their friends, and then repeat forever. I'm not going to hide it. That freaking terrifies me. That lifestyle disgusts me. Like, I just can't do it. No judgment to you. It's not for me.
Yeah.
But their partner is into personal development. They're really, really growing, constantly learning. And they try to make the relationship work, but it simply doesn't. It always, from my experience, what I've seen is it always falls apart because, as you said, it creates that gap. When one person is growing and the other isn't, that means one person is going to become more emotionally intelligent.
Yeah.
And that's going to make conflict resolution so difficult. Very difficult.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Agreed. There's certain instances where somebody may go into the personal development route and their partner doesn't, but their partner still has fundamental skills that are required to make the relationship work. So they might not be into, healing all their trauma and things like that, but they at least have enough emotional intelligence to hold a difficult conversation with you. And in those instances, if the other person can be unconditionally accepting of the person in front of them and decide what this person gives me fills up my cup so much that maybe missing, them not being into business or wanting to make millions of dollars doesn't
You're
impact
right.
me that much.
You're right. As long as
Yeah.
their needs are getting met,
Yes.
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And they're happy.
Yeah. But it depends on your personality type as well. Like, I worked with a lot of clients who are ambitious that cannot be with someone who's not ambitious because the energy is just different. One person's like, go, 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 looking forward, has this big vision for the future. And the other person is just kind of like staying the same. Some people can find it grounding, but other people, they'll think, no, I want someone who's going to move forward at my pace.
Yeah.
So it's so, like, relationships are so nuanced in that way that there's no black and white answer for everyone.
Are you single at the moment?
Yeah, I am.
Okay. What are you drawn to in a man?
The most important thing for me is integrity. Yeah. I think a man that has morals, values, and his actions align with his words is the most important thing for me, especially as someone who has the anxious attachment style pattern. Having emotional intelligence as well and the ability to hold difficult conversations is extremely important. And what else? I'd say those are the key ones.
Those are huge.
Yeah, those are the key ones for me. Because of all of my relationship experiences in the past, those have been the most destructive things
That's
when
what you
they've been
needed.
missing. Yeah, those are the things that I need in order for me to feel safe in a relationship. And there's something about that I kind of want to touch on. It's something I talk about a lot in my content. You can do all the healing work and all the personal growth in the world, but if you're in a relationship with someone who shows up in ways that don't make you feel safe, you just won't feel safe. So the safety, a man that can make me feel safe is like the top
100%.
on my list of priorities. Yeah.
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 I think that actually should be the top priority for
Yeah.
any man who's dating. Not the man feeling safe. That's sure that's important as well, but making sure the woman feels
Feel
safe.
Yeah.
How do you think a man can create this emotional safety?
Yeah. The biggest place where I see it missing is in communication. For the same sort of reasons why I brought up before, men tend to be more problem solving focused, when a woman just really wants to be seen and held in her experience. And she just wants to know that the man is a safe presence there to hold her through what she's going through. Empathy and curiosity are the biggest factors that will help a man create that safety in that moment. So instead of jumping in with the solutions, acknowledging the emotion that's in front of them.
That's
He's
great.
taking notes.
Yeah, I'm gonna write that down.
When
Yeah.
he will in a conflict pull this.
Yeah.
Not with that.
I'll be like, wait, babe, before I respond. Empathy and curiosity.
So we'll take the hairbrush as an example. She was disappointed when she lost the brush. You were probably focusing on the fact that she lost the brush. That's the surface level problem that she's talking about. But underneath the surface, she's disappointed. Because now, maybe she's going to feel like her hair is not going to look good on the podcast. She's going to feel a little insecure. Those are the underlying emotions that you will get to find when you go in with curiosity. Oh, I'm so sorry, babe. How did that make you feel? She'd be like, oh, it made me feel really frustrated and sad. Acknowledge the emotion and offer empathy. Oh, I'm so sorry to hear that it made you feel sad. That must be really difficult. That's all we want. And then, is there anything I can do to support you as an added layer to that? So instead of you offering your solution, let her bring the solution to you. And what's great about this is that then it sets you up for success as well. Instead of you feeling like there's so much pressure on you to have to try and figure out what to do about the situation, she has the answer. And this applies for both genders, by the way, but
Yeah.
it's definitely something that women need from their men. The second thing is about consistency in a relationship. If you don't stick to your word and you're flaky with plans, or you shut down when things get difficult and you walk away, instant breach of safety in the relationship for a woman. Yeah. She needs to feel that you're predictable enough for her to feel safe. And the predictability is just in continuing
That's
to
so
show
important.
up. It's so important.
I think I never like consciously thought about
It's
it.
predictability, isn't
Yeah.
it?
It is.
Yeah.
It has to be predictable. You
Because
have to know.
unpredictable men
Yeah.
make women feel very unsafe.
Very unsafe. Very unsafe. And a man that's like completely chaotic within himself, a woman's nervous system will understand that. Even if he's putting on a facade, a woman will always know when a man is carrying chaos within himself.
Yeah, you want to know something funny? Sometimes I've introduced Elvira to different friends, and she would pick up a red flag that I would miss, even though I consider myself to be very socially intelligent. Very. But sometimes she notices things that I don't, and that's one of the superpowers of women. That
Intuition.
feminine intuition. Yeah, she would say something like, "That friend of yours, he has very chaotic energy. And I don't know, there's something about him that feels off." And then long and behold, later I realized it's like, oh wow, she was
right.
absolutely right about that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Woman's intuition is really strong.
Excuse me for looking at my watch, but I
It's
think
okay.
we're about time. Sarah? I
Oh,
wanna,
really?
Yeah.
I have more questions.
Yeah.
So this is second
We
part.
could do one more. Do you have
Do you
one
know
more,
what? I
Fana?
need to invite you guys on my podcast because I really wanted to bring you onto the podcast. So why don't you guys come over to me and we'll continue the
Yeah.
conversation? Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Guys, where can they find you?
On Instagram, my handle is I am Sarah Boutros.
Perfect. I'll
Yeah.
tag you on YouTube and on Spotify as well. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank
and
you for
we'll see
having me.
Yeah.
Thank
our
you so
pleasure.
much.
No worries. All right.